Thank you to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. for sponsoring this video. Hello everybody, Eternal Flame here, and welcome to the next episode of you guys' JJK Theories, cuz you guys definitely like this series. So yeah, we're going in for part 2 of you guys' insane JJK Theories. Woo! Thank y'all for commenting your theories though that you did comment. There are a lot of theories that were really good in this, so I picked out my favorite ones. So welcome back to several JJK theories done by you guys in the comment section down below. Remember to comment down your own theories if you want a chance at being in the next episode of this series. So without further ado, let's get into this. As today we got even more theories because we have a total of 8. Yes, 8 of you guys' JJK theories. So let's get into the insanity and let's get into this. With the first theory being done by someone known as the Alpaca of Support 258. Where their theory goes, some weeks ago I had a theory about how we could speculate of what the original users of some cursed tools were. Since we know because of Nanami's sword that these tools probably come from the techniques of real sorcerers. Stuff like how the soul split katana might come from a sorcerer with a similar technique as Sukuna's cleave or dismantle. Maybe just a similar technique. Or how Playful Cloud is multiplied by the user's strength kinda sounds like how Maki and Toji's heavenly restriction that enhances their body's natural strength work. This is something I do 100% agree with because we do know that every single cursed tool is originating from some cursed technique. Though that does make some insane questions pop up, like who was the person that had the cursed technique that let them cut through everything so long as they could view the soul? Because reminder, the soul split katana is able to cut through anything so long as the user of it is able to view the soul. Though this is also just a super interesting theory nonetheless, but this is also something that we know is very, very possible. It makes some things really interesting about who is a possible sorcerer and who just had this technique in history in the past. Though I guess that's something we're never going to find out about unless Gege decides to draw some extra manga where it focuses on this one random guy who has the ability to cut through anything and now just died and end up giving it to a random sword ability for someone else to use in the future. But who knows? Gege can do anything. It's Jujutsu Kaisen. For all we know, this guy might be super important to Sukuna's flashbacks, and as Sukuna looks at the sword, he might actually recognize the sword next week. Who knows? We have to wait until Jujutsu Kaisen in the future to actually learn about what this sword could potentially mean and the fact that all curse settings are related to the users and what that could mean. And the next theory is about Megumi Fushiguro and about how Megumi will be one of the people to awaken an open barrier domain, as the theory was directly made by Dude5281. Where they basically say, I think it's highly implied Megumi will gain an open domain. He uses technically an open domain with the environment as the structure. Being inside Sukuna, he'd have a much greater understanding of open domains, watching Sukuna use it from inside. Sukuna's fingers will give Megumi the necessary CE to use it, as it's implied Yuji gained a massive boost from the fingers. All of Megumi's trauma and PTSD will push him more to his psycho side, which allow him to push his abilities even further. I believe his sister's death, Gojo's death, and getting hit by Infinite Void will actually do the opposite of weaken him and make him crazy enough to legit form an open domain to fight Sukuna's open domain when he gets back. And then finally, the method that this will be done through is Maki's Soul Split Katana will end up splitting Sukuna and Megumi's soul, and Sukuna will instead use Tengen as a vessel. Now up first, I do believe that it is very, very likely and very possible that Megumi is going to be able to gain an open barrier domain for the reasons that they directly say. Megumi's domain is already accustomed to being directly fused with the world itself because it basically uses buildings itself as a structure directly. So if Megumi would be able to figure out the structure of an open domain, it would make a lot of sense, especially considering the fact he has direct experience of Sukuna not just using it once, but 3 times in his own body, so it'd be able to pass on that experience directly to him because Megumi is consciously aware of everything that is directly happening. So it'll just be a matter of applying that direct experience to him. Furthermore, with Sukuna already being in this weakened and nerfed state that he directly is, even if he gets his domain back, it could be very possible that Megumi could get such a buff stacked out with how nerfed Sukuna is that he would actually be able to stand a chance. The reason that this buff would make direct sense is because Megumi has by far and away the most amount of Sukuna in him. He basically has a total of the full Sukuna, unlike Yuji who had only 15 fingers of Sukuna. Pause. So basically, when Sukuna is directly freed from Megumi, or if that even does happen, Megumi would get a massive amp because he has so much of Sukuna's cursed energy inside of him, and it's just all soaked completely in it. Furthermore, Megumi is also going to get massive emotional amps too because of how much depression he's effectively feeling right now, and as y'all know, negative emotions turn into cursed energy, especially if you intentionally do it, and if Megumi enters that psycho insane mode that he did against the Finger Bearer and against Reggie, then oh boy, Megumi might be going absolutely insane. Overall, though, I do think this is an incredibly solid theory because I do think a lot of the groundworks for Megumi awakening an open barrier domain has been set up for a long while, especially because of how much interest Sukuna directly sees in him, and Megumi being one of the few people who uses barriers in the real world rather than using a direct barrier he himself can make. Stack that with the fact that we know he gets Sukuna's knowledge and experience, and how many times Sukuna has used the domain already, and it just overall makes a lot of sense for Megumi to be able to awaken an open barrier domain, and eventually clash with Sukuna's because of how much has been going on. Though I don't think it's going to be Maki's Soul Split Katana that does him in, I do think that it's going to take a lot more than Maki's Soul Split Katana, and I do also see it being very likely that Sukuna could end up taking Tengen on as a new vessel, and that's something I could just see being Sukuna's true final villain battle, but at the same time, I'm not entirely too sure. However, before we do continue on with this video, I do want to take a brief break in order for us to talk about the sponsor of the page, Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. are a snack-based company that is based in Japan, with the ideal and goal of being able to share the Japanese snacking culture with the world, with Tokyo Treat being much more focused on modern snacks, and Sakura Co. being much more focused on traditional snacks, which I believe these are all perfect for you. After all, there's no better way to enjoy anime other than with a nice snack next to you, and these snacks certainly hit the spots. So now we're going to get into the Tokyo Treat snack box and what they have to store for you, with the theme for this box being the Sakura Snacktastic, with a lot of the snacks being Sakura themed due to the new spring that has sprung. Where the three I would like to focus on in particular is the Kit Kat Matcha, the Pure Potato, Butter, and Rock Salt Chips, as well as finally the Ichigo Cream Column. Now you might be wondering this, Eternal, how are we supposed to be able to figure out what is which or what's inside of them? They're in Japanese, the ingredients are in Japanese, and normally that would be an issue. However, they got you covered already, as they have this nice little booklet, nice, stylish, amazing to read, and makes everything super clear about what is what for you to understand, as well as get more and more details and knowledge about the culture. So yeah, you're gonna be covered, and it helped me to figure out a lot about the Pure Potato, Honey, Butter, and Rock Salt Chips, because at first I didn't even know what these were. So now I'm going to actually try one for you guys. Alright, welcome to my extremely messy desk. As now we're going to open up this bag of chips with the power of editing magic. It'll look like it is done. As you can clearly see, I got the chip, the nice good chip. Now we're going to actually try and eat it. It's really good. Like, this is one thing that you can especially snack on, and it's just overall going to work really, really good. So I really recommend using this especially, because it just goes really good with anything you're doing. Like, I'm going to use this later to watch, like, a bunch of JJK stuff when I'm done later, actually done recording, so yeah. After all, I live and breathe JJK. So anyways, now we're going to move on to the Sakura Co boxes, because this is just the first of the two boxes, with the Sakura Co being the beauty of Sakura as its general theme. In order to celebrate the Sakura season, they have given several treats that are very Sakura based and spring based, with my favorite being the Sakura Shiriko biscuits, which these are delicate biscuits made with a little paste in between the center of them that tastes incredible, and something I would really recommend, as it especially goes well with the Sakura tea. The Sakura tea being a rather sweet tea in order to enjoy your afternoon with, as it goes really good in the afternoon itself. So I'm actually going to make this tea directly on screen for you guys as well. As I make this tea, I'm going to read out this little section of the booklet directly, in order to talk a little bit more about what they're trying to represent for the Sakura season, which the Sakura season is made to remind us of our life's impermanence and the importance of appreciating the present. So enjoy these nice, sweet little things, like these treats and just life in general and everything that life presents to you. That is what this box and season is made to represent. So that's about it, but remember to use our code in the comment section down below or in the description directly in order to get $5 off on your first purchase. It's worth it, and I really recommend it. I hope you have a good day, and thank you to Sakura Co and Tokyo Treat for sponsoring the video. Now, the next video was done by someone known as ALQZ4WX. I have no idea how to say your name, I'll be honest with you. But their quick theory is effectively that the reason Sukuna is unable to use the fire arrow or didn't use the fire arrow to kill Gojo or at any point in the fight is because the fire arrow is not innately Sukuna's curse technique, but because it's innately Yuji's curse technique, as they have several pieces of evidence that does make it make sense. For example, how Sukuna was able to use the fire arrow at the same time as he uses domain expansion, in a similar way to how Sukuna was able to use both 10 shadows in the Mahoraga wheel as well as his own curse technique through the domain expansion, with Sukuna specifically specifying in the fight against Gojo that he was only able to use the 10 shadows technique and cleave and dismantle inside of the domain expansion and not use any other curse techniques, because he was using 10 shadows. with them also getting the potential idea that if a piercing blood were to explode and then be set ablaze as basically a combination of blood manipulation and fire manipulation from his original technique, as well as blood manipulation that he got directly from eating his brothers, that would be a pretty cool way to balance out the techniques and just make a really cool combination in order to use against Sukuna. Now, there is one issue with the curse technique, which is the fact that Higuruma's domain expansion when he directly fought against Yuji Itadori didn't take the curse technique, but instead took Yuji's cursed energy, which is always kind of the flaw when it comes to curse technique videos about Yuji potentially always having a curse technique like the fire arrow or anti-gravity. However, it does make a lot of sense if you consider how Sukuna saying black box might be opening Yuji's black box instead and turning on the ability instead, so he can use the Yuji's fire arrow and not actually Yuji being able to use his fire arrow. And basically Sukuna turns the black box off, but now that Yuji has soul awareness, he should be able to actually turn his black box back on in a similar way to how Kenjaku awakened all of the sorcerers to begin with. And while he needed Mahito's curse technique to do it, that was on other people's brains, so it might be possible that Yuji, with his new access to soul manipulation, might be able to do it onto his own brain. Furthermore, this just overall would be really cool to see comboed with blood manipulation, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. Like, just imagine a massive pool of blood, a massive wave of blood coming towards you that's just set on fire. That would look sick. So overall, this is a really good theory, some really good stuff. I really like it. So yeah, let's move on to the next theory. The next theory is done by someone known as Dr. Nemoy, which the theory is about what if Urame is the main villain of JJK. Maybe they killed Sukuna in the past, and they have also been alive for a very long time. So maybe they were the person who created Sukuna as a person to break the system of JJK. Now, I will say, if JJK wanted to make a plot twist and a half of a series on how to break the series that, like, shatter people's ankles and do something that no one was expecting at all, and have Urame be the main villain, I could see this being very possible, but I'd also just be very worried about how JJK could do it, because of the issue of if JJK does this could very much end up just being a Black Zetsu type situation, which I don't think anybody wants, but if JJK can do it right, he can do it right. You know, there's a lot of things that JJK can do right, so I wouldn't be surprised if JJK can ends up figuring out a way to make this work if this ends up being the case. I just doubt it. Like, there's not really much evidence or not really much I can really say about this theory overall, but I still think it's a really cool theory nonetheless. The next theory is done by someone known as Norb King, where their theory is about, do you think it's possible that Yuji's curse technique could be curse extraction, removing negative emotions attached to the souls, or in other words, removing curse energy from a body or object? It means the conditions of affecting the soul becomes closely connected to emotions, especially negative emotion. They also theorize that each delayed effect of Yuji's left-right good night combo is his curse technique instinctually trying to remove the negative emotions from the opponent's soul. Based off chapter 222, they think the conditions of this technique will require exact control, or else you just grab onto the other person's complete soul and switch places instead of removing it. They also go on to directly say that this would explain how Yuji is able to use the techniques of his brothers, because he's effectively using their souls inside of his body as well as taking on the burden of their negative emotions. Now, this would be by far and away the most fitting curse technique for Yuji, because it heavily reflects Yuji's personality overall. Yuji is very much someone who does want to take on the burdens of others, and that's why he burdened himself for so long of having Sukuna inside of him. That's why he decided to live the way he does. That's why he decided to live a life where he could make sure that people get proper deaths. That was like the main core of his goal. This would fit Yuji extremely well as a curse technique. However, this is a curse technique that I just don't see Yuji having for like the same reason I don't see him having the fire arrow, at least for a little bit, which is because of the entire issue of Higuruma's curse technique would have taken this one away, and this theory implies that Yuji has always had it, which means that each Divergent Fist he landed would have landed this technique. However, Higuruma's curse technique would have taken it away inside of the domain, rather than just Higuruma taking away his cursed energy instead. So while I don't see this theory being possible at all, it is still a really good theory that I like. It fits Yuji incredibly well. It fits a lot with Yuji's overall themes. It just doesn't fit with the established plot up to this point, because it does contradict the entire Higuruma battle. Unless they end up pulling off that this wasn't actually a curse technique all along, and this was actually just an attribution of his soul itself, or his cursed energy trait, which either of them works, and it doesn't contradict the Higuruma battle, which makes this technique very possible to happen. So there are ways that this could potentially happen, it just wouldn't be Yuji's innate curse technique, because Yuji's innate curse technique being this would contradict a lot. Now our next theory is going to be the same theory from two separate people, however they have separate pieces of evidence and separate arguments, so I'm going to go over each of them individually. With the first theory being done by Annie Swift TV Recaps, where their theory is basically Sukuna sacrificed his fire arrow in order to bypass all the steps to use the World Slash. The reason for that is because of the fact that Gojo's death right now is a plot hole, because we find out in one of the future chapters it requires both hand signs and chants in order for Sukuna to directly use the World Slash on an opponent. The reason that they believe this is because of the fact that Gojo's death is currently a plot hole because of that. So a sacrifice of a curse technique would make a lot of sense in order to bypass the steps completely. So sacrificing the ability to use the fire arrow at all, being the cost for that, just makes a lot of sense, considering every other time we see him use the world slash, he needs to do both the hand signs and the chants. Even though Yuta does imply it could be either the hand signs or the chants, he doesn't actually know fully how the technique works, so it could be a requirement of using both hand signs and chants, or just using hand signs, just it would require more hand signs in order to do, and same with chants, which is also possible, but this would make a lot more sense. So basically, in short, they sacrifice the fire arrow in order to perform the world cleave, which does make a lot of sense considering, like, the fire arrow I do certainly think is an extremely powerful technique, but him sacrificing it against Gojo in order to perform the world slash would be a decent way to explain it. I think a lot of people would feel it's justified if he had to sacrifice the fire arrow, because it would be an appropriate enough nerf in order for him to get the world slash instead, and just overall, it's just a really good theory in my opinion. Plus, heavenly restrictions are just a game of equivalent exchange, so a curse technique application for a curse technique application works and makes a lot of sense in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. It also makes a lot of sense to explain why Sukuna hasn't used the fire arrow at all, because even Kusakabe just directly questions of why he hasn't used it yet, and because he can't use it. Overall, I do think this is a good theory. I think this would justify a lot of things in Jujutsu Kaisen. I think a lot of people would also just be satisfied with this being the way he was able to perform World Slash in order to take out Gojo, because he needed to sacrifice the fire arrow. It helps Gojo a lot because it shows how desperate Sukuna was. But now we're going to move on to the next theory, which is directly done by Toji, but with 3 eyes. Where basically their entire theory is that it wasn't actually one technique that was sacrificed, but it was 2 curse techniques that it was sacrificed instead. Where they sacrificed both 10 shadows and the fire arrow because he no longer needed 10 shadows since Mahoraga was dead, which could be the main reason he wanted it, even though I do disagree with that being the main reason he wanted it. But now that Mahoraga was gone, he likely just didn't see any more need for having the 10 shadows, and he chose to sacrifice both in order to bypass both conditions of needing to both chant and have hand signs. It would also make Sukuna's Heian era form even more useful and even more the peak of absolute Jujutsu. It overall would make a lot of sense that Sukuna did use both techniques in order to sacrifice them in order to actually properly cast the World Slash. Though I will say he doesn't really need to sacrifice 2 techniques, not because he doesn't need to bypass 2 binding vows, but more so because of the simple fact of he can still do chants, he can still talk. And I really think that Gojo was incredibly confident by that point and just had no idea what was going on, and which is why he didn't try and interrupt Sukuna talking. Furthermore, it's only 4 words Sukuna needs to say in order to trigger it, so if he said those 4 words and then sacrificed like 10 shadows in order to cast the World Slash, it would still work. After all, the only real thing that was hindering him that he wasn't able to do in that moment was hand signs. He could still do chants, so if he just like sped said the chants, that would make a lot of sense. Like, man just said them at like the speed of light in order to make sure he could cast it no matter what. But overall, I do think this is a good theory. I think that both of these are very good theories. It would answer the entire thing that has become a plot hole in the community recently of how did Sukuna cast the World Slash, considering what is necessary in order to cast it and what has been consistently necessary of both hand signs and chants. Because even if he could have still chanted because he still has a voice, how was he able to cast hand signs when one of his hands was literally gone? But overall, still good theory. So now we're going to move on to the final theory, which is done by Chris Maris 121. Where their theory is effectively that Yuji is a result of Kenjaku attempting to experiment with heavenly restriction in the physical areas, in order to explain things like why Yuji's physicals are just so off the chart but not as much as a normal heavenly restriction user, where they were attempting to experiment with heavenly restrictions in order to create something that could be possible to contain Sukuna within, which they heavily succeeded at, by the way, because Sukuna had no chance at all of breaking out of Yuji's body. As this also fits in with how heavenly restrictions have direct resistance against curses, as Yuki has directly stated in the past, as well as his innate soul understanding, which goes very well in hand with how heavenly restriction allows people, once fully realized, to be able to view the soul. Because you do need to be able to view the soul fully in order to actually use the Soul Split Katana to its full extent, which is why Maki could only use it to its full extent after she was able to see the same way that Toji did. Now, Chris actually does kind of doubt his theory a little bit, purely because it does ask the question of why didn't Kenjaku end up just putting Sukuna inside of a heavenly restriction user rather than trying to make his own. However, there are actual explanations for why this could be the case. For example, for why Sukuna didn't go inside someone like Toji or Maki, it's because Sukuna wouldn't work inside of them, because their body directly neutralizes curse energy and just has no curse energy inside of them. So best case scenario, Sukuna would never be able to fully manifest at all, because he can't manifest in something that doesn't have curse energy. Worst case scenario, Sukuna gets purged away completely. It's a similar reason to why Kenjaku can't possess either Toji or Maki's body, because of the fact that they don't have curse energy, and Kenjaku's curse technique directly relies on curse energy. So a glitch would more than likely happen. Furthermore, this would work as a perfect hybrid in between, where they have a near perfect heavenly restriction levels of strength, where it's almost perfect, but they also have the ability to keep growing in terms of cursed energy and cursed technique, while also being able to infuse said soul-based abilities into a cursed technique potentially in the future as well. Overall, just creating a perfect hybrid in between, which would very well go hand in hand with what Kenjaku is trying to represent, of Kenjaku trying to make something that goes beyond humanity as a whole, so him creating something that could be the combination of sorcerer and heavenly restriction overall just makes a lot of sense for someone like Kenjaku to do. Now overall, I do like this area a lot. I could see this being very, very possible as the explanation for how Yuji became this strong, and maybe even why Sukuna just finds the creation of Yuji Itadori to be so incredibly messed up, because they're just some hybrid of heavenly restriction and physical strength and cursed energy, something that shouldn't technically exist, but is just this phenomena that does exist, which would explain a lot about why Sukuna is just so creeped out about Yuji. So yeah, this was a really good episode of JJK Theories done by you guys. Thank you all for submitting your theories like usual, and I want to hear what you guys' theories are for the next episode. I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace out. Have a good day.